Good day and welcome to today's Conversation podcast. I'm so privileged. I'm hosting a man of the caller, a renowned voice in our country, a man that speaks truth to power. And he holds, I think, himself and, the organization that he comes from with a lot of pride and integrity. I'm privileged to host Honorable Bishop Paul Mususu. Bishop, welcome to today's conversation.
Thank you, my brother, Ambassador Mwamba. It's good to sit here and have a conversation. I was a bit apprehensive. I wasn't too sure. These days, for some reason,
yes,
I try by all means to avoid the camera.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm lucky to have you here.
Yes, I really struggled a bit. But I said I would just make myself available.
No, I'm grateful. I think there's something we're trying to do and do differently.
Yes.
Discuss the issues affecting our country, through your lenses, through your experiences. We've recognized that there's no credible voice or platform in which people can discuss the affairs of our country, I think in a sober manner. And it's in fact titled The Conversation, deliberately so. What we are having is a conversation. So I'm grateful and thank you for the opportunity that we've granted us.
Yes.
Who is Paul Mususu before we see the larger-than-life figure of Bishop Paul Mususu?
Well, he's just a human being like anyone else in the country.
Yeah.
A Zambian citizen. I was born on the Copper Belt, in Chingola to be precise. My father was a miner, started school there, until he passed in 1968. And my father was Lunda from Wenilonga, and my mother is Kaonde from Mufumbwe. So we went back to Mufumbwe. Then it was called Chizera. It was part of Kasempa district then, before it was separated. And I continued my education there, primary, went to Solwezi to do my upper primary, and then went to Wenilonga Secondary School. And then I went to straight. And I think that would also come up. We can clarify how I landed myself in this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to the Evangelical University now, which was a theological college of Central Africa, to do my theological degree.
Yes.
And that's where I graduated from. And I became a pastor by default. Again, I can unpack that a bit. Single.
Did you pursue the theological studies to become a pastor, or did you pursue them?
No.
Yes.
No. That's why I was saying that stumbled upon. In my development, when I became a Christian in 1971, my mother too became a child of God. I used to read my Bible. And I recall, just as a small boy, a visitor came home visiting with Mom and said, "Oh, you are fortunate to have a boy who, at his age, is even able to read the Bible." And Mom said, "That's my biggest worry." It started too early.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation, and I just dropped the thought and said, "Mom, when I grow up, and if I felt like I was straying from God, I'll drop whatever I would be doing and go to Bible school." And
you started that early.
Yes. No, I just said it, but I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And I went to secondary school. The investment, this is now the catch, the investment of Scripture Union. You are familiar with Scripture Union. Yeah. The Bible studies, the devotional things that they did. And we used to have Scripture Union camps every April. And it was the thing. So when I look back, my Christian life actually skyrocketed. when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And it is at that point that I began to say, what can I put back in this investment from Scripture Union? So the thought was now beginning to develop, the interest. And I would admire people like, who was then our traveling secretary, Joe Capolio. And so these people can serve God. And so my Form 5, I said to myself, as I was praying about my exams, I said, God, if you get me a good grade, that's either 1 or 2, I'll not forget you. So, of course, when my results came, the temptation was even great because my results were better.
Yeah.
So the temptation was, maybe I should go to... At that time, my eyes were really focused at ZT, the Copperbelt University.
Investing now,
That's where I was really geared to direct my energies. But then that voice kept coming very loudly. But you said you'll not forget me.
Yeah, yeah.
I made a quick decision to invest in Scripture Union. So that's how I went to do theology. I was going to do theology and come and serve in Scripture Union.
To strengthen Scripture Union in high schools, yes, in secondary schools.
And in my view, it was a 10-year program, tithe. I give my 10%, and after that, then I would be a free citizen to do whatever I wanted to do, business-wise or whatever. So I went to theological college on that premise, went, studied, did my degree, and at the time when I was graduating, I even applied to Scripture Union. But they had taken a graduate that had graduated a year before me. So they said they did not have room for me, which was a very disappointing thing. And part of the reason, because of my exposure to Scripture Union, I didn't feel bound to any denomination. I was more interdenomination. Because
Scripture Union was interdenomination.
I was thinking more interdenomination. But then that door was closed. It is at that point, and during my study, by the way, there were churches that would visit us to go and do Easter conferences. And so that's how I more or less got exposed to my denomination. And at the end of it, even before I graduated, I turned down the offer to become a pastor because I was going to Scripture Union. But when that door was closed, that's when the church came and said, okay, you can't just be sitting here and waiting endlessly. Maybe you can come and become a pastor. So reluctantly, I took up that role. And that's
as they say, the rest is history.
That was the beginning of this journey as a pastor. So I never ventured out to become a pastor. So one thing led to another. Like, for example, the church that took me on took me as a bachelor. So I felt I owed it to them. First of all, I told myself, the first 2 years, it's ministry. I will not even talk about marriage. So after 2 years, then I began to think. Actually, not even after 2 years. During the 2 years, I'd already begun to develop some thinking in that area. And so when I got married, it was like, okay, if these people put up with a single pastor, maybe they should also have the benefit of having a married pastor. And at that time, I was
Where were you serving? Where was your posting?
I was at Chilenge Evangelical Church. That was my first. 1987, I started there as a pastor. And 3 years down the road, that's when I got married. On May 1990, I got married to my wife. And we then started serving. But again, I was very, focused. I wanted to still see how I can continue developing the interdenomination and the Scripture Union involvement. But the doors were just open, not so much with Scripture Union, but this time it was more or less at a higher level of ZAFES and EFZ. I was one of the younger youth pastors that served on the EFZ board as early in those years, as early as 1988, 89. I was on the desk at Scripture Union. Then I started with the Stembiso Daka, who was a bridge or an interim person he was an administrative secretary by the structures, and the first general secretary, the first Zambian general secretary of EFZ then was Godfrey Mlando, who I knew very well. But as soon as I got into Lusaka, he stepped out. Now, I wouldn't venture into his life. But after we lost Godfrey Mlando, then Stembiso Daka filled in the gap before Bishop Imakando now became the general secretary. He started as general secretary, and it was under his regime that we changed to the position of executive director at EFZ.
Making it more full-time, more executive.
And I worked with Sembito Daka as one of the younger pastors. I also worked with Joey Makando, and so it developed. From then, my denomination.
In fact, your denomination, before people get lost, you come from Evangelical Church in Zambia.
Yes.
And you've served, I think, as one of the longest executive directors for Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, which is a mother body.
Yes.
There are two differences. Even Evangelical Church in Zambia, sometimes people may not know it.
Yes.
For me, when I served in Western Province, I found it's a very dominant church in Western Province. Just speak briefly about the church.
The Evangelical Church in Zambia was started by I think people would identify Andrew Murray.
Yeah.
He has written some books on prayer and devotional books. Andrew Murray was a missionary that started work in South Africa, to be precise, with the sailors. You know, you did history, the Vasco da Gamas and everyone that was going around the coast. So he went and set up ministry to reach out to those sailors. And
who would dog for supplies.
So they would go and preach to the people on the ship and just share the word. As they would be picking supplies and refreshing themselves, then they would preach to them. That was the initiative. But sooner or later they realized, but there were some Africans inland who also needed the gospel. So they developed what they called South African General Mission. And South Africa General Mission started work in South Africa itself. Then the Bantustans then, this is in 1889. So they did the work there until they felt, well, we cannot keep this to just South Africa. There are some other people,
unreached people,
inland. So now you remember, Cecil Rhodes is now developing, coming inwards with the British company.
South African company,
so they also began to develop, coming inwards, inland. And so that's how they developed and came to Zambia. And when they came to Zambia, South African General Mission, at that point then they engaged also the conversation. Well, we are not South African. We are now getting inland. So how can we continue using the name South Africa General Mission? So they evolved and became Africa Evangelical Fellowship. So from South African General Mission, they became Africa Evangelical Fellowship, establishing churches right across from, I would say, from East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Tanzania, and coming downwards. So they had presences in Mozambique, Malawi, Zimbabwe, right across to the west coast, up to Angola. Down Namibia. So we as Africa Evangelical Fellowship, we had presence in on those countries. So to Zambia, they came in 1910 at the invitation of one priest that came from Congo. He came, Arnold Bailey. He came to Zambia on his way to South Africa. Then he saw that there were so many people that did not know about God.
Christ,
So that's how we went. And the first option was to ask the South Africa General Mission to send missionaries to come and help in the evangelization of the people. And so when they came to then the colonial leadership at the time, they were the ones that allocated areas of operation at that time, because there was the concept that people are best reached in their own tribes, their own traditions. That's why in Zambia you can look around, and if you mention a church, you associate it with tribe.
Yeah, true.
You know,
true.
if you talk about, for example,
the Catholic.
Catholic is
The
predominantly.
mostly Bemba, yes.
If you're talking about SDS,
the Adventist. Yeah.
if you're talking about New Apostle.
Yes.
So when the
missionaries
arrived, they were sent to different tribal groups. And they went and started work and operated there. So much that even when people now began to come into town, there was that inclination to reach the people of their kind, because the church is predominantly there. So you are right when you say Western Province was most pronounced as evangelical church in Zambia. Yes, because of those roots. Because when our missionaries started work, the first contact was in Solwezi, a place called Kisalala. And Chief Kapijimpanga was the first person that allocated them a portion where they established the first
so that's
station.
why they're also very strong in Northwestern Province.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is from Northwestern Province that they went to Western Province. The missionaries that came from South Africa General Mission crossed over from Northwestern Province, starting with Solwezi. They went all the way from Solwezi to Mutanda, Musonweji, right across Lalafuta into Kaoma, and even Luampa, before they went across to even Mongu and other places. So you'd find that if you are in Western Province, the prominent features of our church would be the Mbundas, Luchazis, Luvales, even some Lundas there. You find very, very few Lozi-speaking people in our church. Largely because we operated for many years in those areas of the Nkoyas, Luchazis, and by the time they were going to Mongu itself, we were... It
was later when the mission was established.
Exactly, and already Francois Coilard had already also done the work. You know, so they saw this church that was coming belonging to those other tribes. So basically, that is where the evangelical church has its roots, from this South African General Mission, Africa Evangelical Fellowship. Now, eventually, in 1976, this is after independence, we were speaking the language of Zambianization. So at that time, most of our leadership at then were missionaries. They led the headquarters. So in the process of Zambianizing our church, then we came up with our own constitution. And that is how we established now.
And would you know why you were not absorbed in the United Church of Zambia? Because, you know, KK attempted to unite churches that he thought were similar in philosophy, in theology.
Yes. Some of our missionaries actually elected to join. Some Scottish, some Scottish missionaries, they were at ease and they joined the United Church. Some, the Free Church of Scotland. We had some of our missionaries from that background, and also a number of, maybe let me backpedal and say, the South African General Mission was not a denomination. It was an interdenomination groupings. Because it sucked in different missionaries from different church backgrounds. And gave them base to operate. Yes. It was a platform for those who wanted to come and operate in Africa. In Africa. So South African General Mission, by nature of being an interdenomination, brought on board Methodists, Presbyterians, Free Church of Scotland, Baptists. Of course, Pentecostals were not in existence at that time when they came. So all these came together, primarily as an interdenomination, they operated like that. So you would find that even as we were setting up our structures, you find because of the kind of missionaries that you had and the background they came from, they would definitely have their imprint and the influence from their church where they're coming from.
Yeah.
If they were Methodist, there would be a flair of Methodist kind of theology and doctrine and coming through. And if they were Baptist, there would be conservative thread of the Baptist. So even within our church, when we established our denomination, that was one of the tension point, because a Baptist would want this particular angle to be reflected in the Constitution.
Yes.
And the other one would want
this also to be emphasized.
So, fortunately, at the time, we had also individuals among our ranks who were also trained, and they were exposed, and they realized that this one is pushing the Baptist doctrine, this one is pushing the Anglican doctrine, or the
So you had to find in your constitution harmonization points.
Exactly.
Literally consensus.
Exactly. And it was helpful that we had our own Zambians, some of them, like our first General Secretary, who later became Bishop Reverend Kasonso. He had gone to train in Canada to do his bachelor's. He was trained teacher initially, but he went for theological training in Canada. So those ones, plus many others, were able to skim through and say, no, we can't put this particular emphasis, because Evangelical Church in Zambia is not Anglican. It's not Free Church of Scotland. It's not Baptist. It's not. So we had to find a middle way to really
find your own identity in effect.
Yes. That's exactly what happened. But thank God for those who were trained, because among missionaries it would have been very difficult, because each one would be pushing their own influence and their own theology, depending on the church background they came from. Because South African General Mission, Africa Evangelical Fellowship, was an interdenomination. It still is, even today. And maybe just pushing it forward. In 1998, when we were already established as a church, the Africa Evangelical Fellowship merged with the SIM, which started as Sudan Interior Mission. They changed this with the same letter. They said serving in mission, which is now, or they remained with the same SIM. And so they merged. And so when you ask today about the Africa Evangelical Fellowship, you won't find it, because it's swallowed up in SIM. You only find SIM, and they are registered autonomously and independently here in Zambia. They have their offices in Roma. So in 1976, we came up with our constitution, and we appointed our first General Secretary, Zambian, in Reverend Kasonso. In 1988, he retired, and we had an interim person who served for 2 years, and they went for theological training, and then they came back and became, at that time we even changed our title. I would say, without reservation, in the evangelical fraternity, our denomination, Evangelical Church in Zambia, was the first one that used the title bishop, apart from the Catholic and the Anglican. So among the evangelicals, and I know so because we were influenced by the Association of Evangelicals in Africa and Madagascar. We invited one Dr. Ademo Tukumbo, and he came. He was the General Secretary then. He came to our conference, and he says, but why do you call your Chief Executive Officer General Secretary? You're a denomination. You can't call the Chief Executive Officer of the denomination General Secretary. That is for us parachurch. So we said, what do we put in place? Is our chief is above pastor? What do we put in place? He said, why don't you call them bishop?
Wow.
And it soared like bushfire. We were meeting in Kabwe, and immediately we were talking the language of amending our constitution, changing from General Secretary. And bishop. We started using the title bishop I didn't even imagine it would be what it is today.
Yeah.
Because every Jim and Jack now are using title bishop, and we are now scaling up and following the Catholics to the archbishop and the like. So
No,
that's how we came.
In fact, we will briefly talk about, I think, the role of the church, especially with emerging negative trends that has affected evangelical and Pentecostal movement. I think you are qualified to speak to that.
Yeah.
You know, with that background, I understand why you flow in interdenominational processes like Scripture Union and, you know, the advocacy work you've undertaken in civic and political affairs. It is now very easy to understand you because the training is clearly, you know, far broader than, say, for example, your denomination.
Yes.
You are a serving pastor. You are doing very well with congregation. But how did you transform to this national leader we see? Because we see you now as a very strong voice, alongside your dear brother, Reverend Japhet Njovu, who's now, I think, in Canada or in the US.
No, he's in Canada.
Yeah.
Yes, he's in Canada. I just woke up to that reality. I think it was 2005.
Yeah.
When I was involved in an attack. I was actually shot at, and there was an article that was carried.
What were the circumstances? Were these car hijackers? Were you a victim of crime? Or was it politics from your church? Because even church has politics.
No, I don't think it was even from the political. I mean, I don't think it was from the church politics. Definitely it was politically motivated. Okay. I'll speak to that a little later. But when I read that article, then I read the words and said, well, it's because Bishop Mususu is a public figure. And that was the first time I was given that appellation, public figure, because I never saw myself as a
public figure.
I was just an ordinary Zambian.
Yeah.
I said, public figure? So I remember talking to Brighton Peary at the Post. I said, public figure? I don't think that I deserve that. He said, no, you are, but you can't run away from that. So I began now to reflect on it. And I think, yes, I came to terms with that and accept. As a pastor, there was a lot of pulling on the direction of just doing my quiet things, dealing with my flock, spiritual life, and concentrate on that. But at the same time, as I indicated, I was already also engaged with this interdenominational group called Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can recall, in 1991, when Dr. Chiroba became president, there was a prayer and thanksgiving at Cathedral of the Holy Cross. And Joy Makando then was our General Secretary at EFZ, thought we needed a youth pastor to speak. And they asked me to speak. Wow. And the theme they had given me was to rebuild the nation. Yeah. We had just come from the collapse of the one-party state. There was a renewal and regeneration in the country with the election of President Frederick Chiluba. There was that vibe, and everything was, everyone was excited. And actually, it was before he declared Zambia a Christian nation.
Okay. Yeah.
We had that prayer meeting.
Yeah, because we had elections 31st October. Or 29th, but he became president, I think, 2nd November.
Exactly.
And the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation was done 2 months later, in December.
Yes.
So there were those activities in between.
Exactly. So we had planned this prayer meeting as church to thank God for the peaceful election, and I was asked
transition,
to speak. And I was asked to speak, and I was speaking. now, Emmanuel,
Yeah.
the new culture.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
remember that I was wearing the suit and I had the new culture that
Yeah.
Chiloba had led us to. So it became so apparent that whoever from the other camp, especially the UNIP, was listening to me. My dress code betrayed me. I was sympathetic with the new regime. And, But of course, I gave the message as I saw it.
Yeah.
One thing that came from that message, which I had, and I had to confront Frank Mutubila then at ZNBC, who were running, there came an advert that was running with my voice and some captions, national building, we need to rebuild this land, this country. And then they would show the roads with potholes and the driver broke, and then they would put me back and they would. So I had some visitation from people I didn't even know. But there were MCCs, former MCCs in Kaunda thing, and they would say, but how can you do this? How can you do this? And they thought, had their hand in it. I'd actually.
So you had preached, just let's clarify, you had preached before elections.
No.
And then your voice was used.
No, I preached after.
Oh, just after elections.
It was a Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thanksgiving.
But the theme that was given to me was national building.
Okay, so when
actually
you
not
spoke,
national building, it was rebuilding.
Rebuilding a country.
Yes,
so when you spoke, then your voice was used in adverts to build the country, actually.
Yes, what I was talking about was the realities that we were going through at that time. And I was making the pronouncements that we need to come from those ruins and rebuild our country. So the message was very clear, but it touches on things that were real. And all things being equal, there was no reason for anyone to even resent and later on protest. But they did, because now they were showing, like rubbing salt in the wounds, how UNIP had run down things in the country, and they will show potholes, they will show empty grain bags and shelves and all those things, and at the back I'm speaking this message. So then I was visited by different members of Central Committee, and I was saying, how can you do this? I thought you were preaching the message, now you're doing the campaign. I said, I'm not even aware. So I watched the ad, and I had to go to Frank Mutubila and I said, please, if you want to do the advert, do it, but please remove me from remove me from whatever you're doing. It was a message that was preached, and let's leave it at that. That's how they.
It must have been a very powerful message. I'll look for it. As a historian, I should look for it.
Yes.
For them, for that message to compel ZNBC to use it as a voiceover.
Yes, they did. They'll show some pictures, and then the message.
So you come to prominence as early as 1991.
1991, I wouldn't say very prominent, because I would be very careful to say I was under the shadows. I was participating. I was invited to the board because they also needed, on the executive board, they needed a youth
representation
voice. Yes, so I was invited there. So most of what was happening, especially when it comes to meetings with Dr. Kaunda, for example, that famous cathedral meeting, we worked together in that particular arrangement, and meeting Dr. Chiluba then in State House, and projecting that he needed to do this. It was one of the works that I had undertaken.
The President Frederick Chiluba is unique. I think there was a spiritual side to the fight for multi-party democracy.
Yes.
And I'm privileged to sit with you as a pastor, a bishop. there was a feeling that the country had regressed to other gods.
Yes.
I think there was that feeling in the 80s and 90s,
Yes.
that we had adopted new gods and we had
Yes.
abandoned
Our own.
our own God that this country has identified
Yes.
itself with. So the fight for multi-party democracy was also a spiritual fight. Because we
Yeah.
see when Zambia is declared as a Christian nation, it becomes your rallying point, the evangelicals, the Pentecostals.
Yes.
It becomes like your national achievement from your personal effort.
Yes.
Before it brought controversies later, but just speak to that period.
The first attempt, I think when I speak about Dr. Kaunda specifically, I'll come on this. But the first attempt by the regime then was the introduction of scientific socialism.
Yeah, in 1978.
Yes. When they were introducing that scientific socialism, as a church, we rejected. And that was the time that the Council of Churches, the Zambia Episcopal Conference, which is Catholic, and the Evangelical Fellowship jointly even made a publication. It was a detailed pastoral letter that spoke to the rationale why we rejected scientific socialism, because it was a direct assault on our belief in God. We were introducing this thing that came on.
Yeah,
And
because
towards
scientific
the end,
just for our viewers, scientific socialism at the heart of it rejects God.
Exactly.
And religion is depicted as an opium of the masses, that
Exactly.
you religious leaders use religion to sway people away,
Exactly.
for example, from national development, to the extent that that's why you have very little footprint of, for example, of Christianity in China or in Russia.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you knew where this was coming from and what it would do to our people.
Exactly. That's the reason why we rose up. And for those doubters, or even those who were ignorant about the scientific socialism, we had experts come and explain, quoting authorities and showing and demonstrating in a very succinct way that this was a danger to our country, our sovereignty. Well, maybe I think I can, by this time, talk about Dr. Kaunda, because scientific socialism was his brainchild. My contact with him, my conversation with him, revealed to me that he actually was embracing something in his innocence. Because for him, you remember in his philosophy
of humanism,
in man was important.
Yeah, man
and
at the center.
You do unto others what you would want them to do.
So
the respect for man was a driving force to accepting that. But when he saw the reaction from the church, he openly told me, he said, no, I didn't think at that level it was like that. How do I come to that? There was a time I was privileged to fly with Dr. Kaunda.
Yeah.
From here to the World Trade Organization, the WTO.
Yes.
And we were hosted in Kenya, Nairobi.
Yes.
He was one of the guests. And the flight was full. I was one of the people that was a guest. I had my ticket. Kenya Airways was full. And they said, there's only space next to His Excellency.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So they went, and I said, ask him. They went and asked Dr. Kaunda if this preacher man would sit next to him.
Yes.
He said, please, my Lord Bishop.
Yeah.
And I have never enjoyed this conversation.
Yes.
Because you can see the 3-hour trip from here to Nairobi. I had the time to ask all sorts of questions.
And he was gracious to respond.
Very, very gracious. Very, very gracious. And sometimes I felt I've overstepped my line. Because I asked even things about Saddam Hussein, and I said, that man was, everyone knew he was evil. How come you, as a humanist, you would befriend him? And he was able to graciously also explain his relationship. He knew the man was evil, and he told me in no uncertain terms, he would have done more harm to this earth, that man, if left alone. But when he chose to have a friend in Kaunda, he says, why not? I can influence him positively. And it was true. What Kaunda did to Saddam Hussein, if it was done by Henry Kissinger or somebody else, it would have been more pronounced. He told me himself. He said it would have been more pronounced. But because it was a black that influenced that man positively, it was not accredited to him. Anyway, nevertheless, I talked to him about the white handkerchief. And people believed there were charms in there. And he says, there's nothing. You know, his hands, his fingers had even twisted, tilted because of holding that handkerchief. So he explained how he came out with a handkerchief. I was really grateful to understand, and he was willing to give me one of the white handkerchief when we landed. But coming back to the issue, he said something of significance, and I want to repeat it because he also repeated it when I visited him in the hospital. Why the church is important. So Dr. Kaunda shared and said, when we got independent as Africans, this is not just Zambia. When we got independent, we looked among ourselves and we saw that, yes, the colonizers, by and large, they came to exploit us, take our minerals and whatever. But there was someone within the colonizer setup, someone who was helpful, who set up hospitals, who set up schools. And that was the missionary. So they said to themselves, Nkrumah included, they said to themselves, well, we have an ally in the missionaries. They may be white, but they are the ones that have brought this education, which opened our eyes for us to even agitate for independence. The missionaries set up hospitals. The missionaries educated us, provided the education that we need. And they looked around Kenya, Kenyatta, you talking about Hastings Kamuzu Banda, you're talking about Kwame Nkrumah. All those went to missionary schools. So if missionaries had helped us, I think they can also help us because we are getting independent, but we've never run government. We don't know where to begin from. So Kaunda said, starting with Nkrumah, they contacted the missionaries in Ghana. Please, can you help us? And the answer was the same. No, we came to do evangelization, mission. We did not come to
run
politics, to engage in governance. Those governance issues are yours. Kaunda says he had friends who were even working with his father. He says he contacted them, and each one of them declined. They said, no. We are not supposed to meddle ourselves in politics. It is at that point that the Julius Nyerere's, Kaunda's, the Kwame Nkrumah's, and the others, the Kenyan, decided to shun this colonial master and choose a friend who had not colonized them, and that's the Russia. So that's how they went to the East. Yes. The scientific socialism has its roots there. And so Russia became a partner. That's why when we went to school, most of our science teachers were Russians. Some Golf, Vos, whatever, Gorbachev, and whatever the names they were. But it's coming from that background. It's not something that deliberately our leaders thought about. And Kaunda made it very clear. We wished the missionaries had helped us. We would not have strayed that much. We were not wanting them to become ministers, cabinet ministers, but just to advise. Like, for example, okay, you have these government coffers. Because of their experience, I would say, normally government does this. And this is what you do to maintain integrity and all the things that we are grappling with. No, they were forced to go to the east. And that's how the Chinese and the Russians became partners with the independent Africa.
States, yeah.
Why? Because they did not trust the same governance of the British who colonized them to be the ones to offer them
solutions.
But they would have trusted a Briton who was a missionary because he offered, even before he offered the solution. But they didn't do that. So KK said to me, I've monitored what you are doing.
Yeah.
And I hope you keep on this journey to help our politicians. Because if you divorce yourself like those missionaries, guess what? Some other people will come and advise them. And they may advise them wrongly. So back to the scientific socialism. It was that move towards the East that brought about the scientific socialism. You know that Russia did not believe in God and whatever. So that influence was taken at face value.
Yeah.
But as a son of a missionary himself, eventually when we rebutted and reacted to that, he realized, no, I think this was not on. And that's how they stopped the scientific socialism. He stopped the scientific.
He stopped it, yeah.
But there was also another one.
For the first time, we saw the church rise in unison.
Yes,
to reject a government policy.
Exactly. And that was not it. But just towards the end of his time, there was these guys that came from Chibombo and they wanted to make fuel from the grass. Hare Krishna or some, no, I forget the name. It was a religious.
The paradise on earth.
Heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth, yes.
The heaven on earth. Those
were given tracts, hundreds and hundreds of tracts of land.
And again, as a church, the three church mother bodies rose and we challenged him and we spoke to him. And again, he rescinded his decision. But more specifically, I think that what distinguishes probably KK in the religious sector, KK from, said Dr. Chiluba, even making a declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation, was the religious or the spiritual advisor, not religious, the spiritual advisor that he had at the State House at the time. I think commonly we all were made aware of that spiritual advisor to President Kaunda, that he would consult whenever he's moving, and he would advise him not to take the flight or move and whatever. So it became like there was a God that was operating there.
That our president was captured
yes,
by foreign gods.
Exactly. And I think that was the tension that we suffered from as a nation and later on as church. But to his credit, I cannot think of all of them put together. I cannot think of someone of the presidents that had respect for the church.
Wow.
More than Kaunda. I say it even when we were flying. I sat in the aisle and he was in the window seat.
Yes.
To get up to go to the facility, he would beg me, he would plead with me. And I said, but it's your seat, Your Excellency. He says, no, my Lord. It's not only that. That cathedral meeting where we met with Dr. Chiluba, something that probably many Zambians do not know. That meeting, Dr. Chiluba refused to attend if President Kaunda was to chair it.
Wow.
And he made it very clear.
Wow.
If Chiluba,
the tensions were very high.
If Kaunda is chairing that meeting, count me out. I'm not coming. So as a church, we played our gymnastics, but with credit to Dr. Kaunda. When he came to the cathedral, we asked as a church politely and we said, because we are meeting in the church, Your Excellency, would you mind if we chaired this meeting? No, my Lord, please, my Lord Bishop, go ahead and chair the meeting. Okay? But we only knew that the only reason we were doing that is to accommodate Dr. Chiluba.
Yeah.
1996 rather, after the election, that Kaunda, parentage clause, and he was not making
Yes, the tension that arose.
After that, Kaunda came back to us as a church and said, the same way you called us at the cathedral, can you call us again? Let's sit down and iron out this. Chiluba refused. Actually, let me also underscore, Dr. Chiluba even told us he cannot go to State House. For sure, he would not have a meeting at State House, no matter who chairs. So we had to move to the cathedral. And even there, he says, as long as it's not Kaunda who's chairing the meeting. So then we had to chair that meeting. 1996, after the election, Kaunda said, can you call us again? Preferably the same venue. We talked to Chiluba, and Chiluba says, no, we're meeting at State House. I said, no. But remember?
Yes.
And we had to go back and forth. Eventually, he said, okay, not cathedral, but let's have a neutral place, which is Mulungushi. And we went to Mulungushi, 1996. And we reminded Dr. Chiluba, you refused Kaunda to chair the meeting.
Yeah.
Now we are at it, and we have to chair this meeting. And Chiluba refused. Unless I chair the meeting, there is no meeting. Ambassador Mwamba, I have never seen in my life.
Yeah.
Dr. Chiluba's motorcade went back to State House because the church put its foot down. We're not allowing you to chair this meeting.
Wow.
We remained with the late Paul Tembo, who was the one that was liaising with us. We negotiated back and forth, and Chiluba was putting his foot down on condition that he chairs the meeting. Only would he come. So we sort of wanted to play the same trick. Allow him to come back. When he comes back, then we can pull a fast one like we did with Kaunda.
With KK, yes.
He did not budge.
And the meeting didn't take place?
Back. No, the meeting took place on condition that Kaunda, the same Kaunda, that's the reason why I'm saying he respected the church. Kaunda came to us and says, no. Let him chair. What is important, let's have discussion. Let's have this conversation. Okay. If he insists that he chairs the meeting. And grudgingly as a church, because you see, we were coming out very forcefully to him. And for us, who are evangelicals, I would even remember the Catholics saying, Ni muntu wanu, sort him out, he's your man.
Yeah,
and we would go there with the influence as evangelicals.
As his brother, yes.
He would not budge a single bit. And that is how Dr. Chiluba chaired that meeting. And we laid the cat out. So I'm saying that to just take it very clearly and mention that he's not the kind of devil because he went to scientific socialism, because he brought the heaven on earth. He was very conscious about God.
Yeah.
And he was very sensitive to the voice of the church. Even today, I can't remember any head of state, including those present, who has that respect for the voice of the church. The church has spoken, and let me do that. I can't. Not even the one that declared Zambia a Christian nation.
Yes.
The other thing, I was a pastor in 87, as I've already mentioned. Until 1991, when Dr. Kaunda left office, as pastors, we were not paying tax to the government. And I remember going with my treasurer and said, no, but why can't you? And I do remember Zedara then explaining. I said, no, but whatever offering you receive is coming from people who are already taxed. So we are not stealing anything away. We're taking away anything. But when Chiluba, despite of declaration of the Zambia as a Christian nation, came and took office, we've been taxed like anybody else.
From 1991?
Yes.
The benefits that you enjoy, you have some tax-free benefits. What benefits does the church involve that are tax-free?
The only rebate that you get is when you are ordering things that to do with the church. Then you have a rebate.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
but like, for example, if you are ordering a vehicle,
Yeah.
there's a prescribed vehicle. And of course, they moved from vehicle to vehicle. Let me also make a disclaimer. Of course, with the churches that have mushroomed, there's every reason why that kind of privilege can be abused. But it can be controlled. But the contrast I'm making is the fact that there was a man who never declared the Zambia a Christian nation, but he held the church in a high esteem and respected the church's voice.
Yeah.
When we spoke to Kaunda, he listened. I can't recall any moment that we conversed with him, and even at a Association of Evangelicals, which is our continental body. I remember we had a meeting here in 1987 for the Association of Evangelicals in Africa, and we had a General Assembly here. And we asked him to come and officially open our meeting.
Yeah.
And he says, on condition that you come and visit me, you pay a courtesy call at State House. And you have a meal with me. So we were, you know, we were given some, I think it was lunch. No, it was dinner.
Yeah.
We went there after he opened our meeting. So even when we had issues, especially during that time, you remember there was the fightings in Mozambique, Zimbabwe,
Yes, the
and
liberation
South Africa.
struggle, yes.
You know, from the Africa Association of Evangelicals in Africa, any intervention, he was the man to see. As a frontline head of state, he had open arms. You'd go there. Catholics would go there. You know, evangelicals would go there. And when you speak as a church, his response, mark this, my Lord.
Wow.
My Lord Bishop, as you have spoken, my Lord Bishop. So there's a lot of merits when it comes to our interaction.
On the conversation, that has come out very clear.
Yes.
That this is a man that could concede. He was a man of concession.
Yes.
He would backpedal. He would go back.
Yeah.
And the period between 87 and 1991 does show.
Exactly.
He wins an election massive, about 94% in 1988.
Yeah.
3 years later, you are calling for multi-party, and for him to cut short his term is expected to go to election only in 1993.
Yes.
So he concedes all those issues,
Yes.
even calls for early election,
He made
which he
a lot of
loses. So I think that has
concessions,
become
yes.
very clear about, it's one of the hallmarks of Dr. Kaunda,
Yes.
that this is a man that could listen and truly listen, even
Yes.
concede
Yes.
from his high office, such as calling for an early election. So that I agree.
Yeah, true.
This transcends us to the role of the church
Yes.
in politics, in civic and political affairs, a role you have played very well, a role that some may deem you controversial because you've issued very strong statements against presidents.
Yes.
You've issued very, very strong statements against certain policies.
Yes.
Just speak to that.
I think by definition, I just do not appreciate injustice. The face of injustice just turns me into something else. I become a beast or something. I just don't like any person being mistreated or being denied what is lawfully theirs. But justice at different and various levels could be even in the context of our role as a nation. When someone wants to change the constitution, give themselves an extra third term or whatever, that should come from the masses, not you because you are in charge. So that boils, my blood. So
we've seen repeatedly every new government wants to have a constitution fashioned around the new leader.
Yes.
We saw it under Dr. Kaunda. We've seen the amendments come. In fact, it's been a stumbling block for proper constitutional development in this country because political parties think that they should now fashion a constitution unto themselves. This government has started a constitutional process. My criticism was that the process is being driven by the Minister of Justice. It should come from stakeholders, from you, the church, from other stakeholders that we need to amend the constitution. It shouldn't be a priority of the leaders in State House because it brings suspicions immediately.
Precisely. Precisely. And I think that's the angle from which I come, that when I define injustice, it's any manifestation of the sort. If someone was even using the legal means, for example, to back Kaunda because of the parentage clause that was initiated and embedded into the thing, uncalled for. Because as it turned out, you know, the Kafupi story and all the things that we were grappling with at the time, it would have also serious implication on the presidency at the time. Because they're saying, okay, fine, if you are talking about parentage clause, then you also do not qualify. So it is those kind of things that we need to be aware of and make sure we speak to it. So if Emmanuel is picked before Makebi Zulu comes to bail him, the process under which is arrested, detained, charged, should be in conformity to the law. Whether they are opponent or the opposition opponents, or indeed the people that are in the party. So I think that Zambians are Zambians, regardless of who they are. And they are supposed to enjoy the same freedoms wherever it entails. And I sometimes feel very, happy and settled when I'm back on the Zambian soil. Because I don't feel quite the same when I'm in South Africa, when I'm in Europe, when I'm in the States. Because for anything, that's a foreign land. And they can pick up on something that you are not even aware of. Out of ignorance, you do certain things and you have broken the law. But here, this is a home. And I would not also, in the same venture, abuse because of my name. So I would expect that those of us that have even names would be the frontliners in enforcing the law, in keeping and observing the law. But because I have a gun, because I'm a police officer, then I begin to abuse my authority. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable, and we cannot allow that. And so, when we have an opportunity, that's why the church should come in. Now, I think to illustrate the point, what comes to my mind really, really strongly, I was in conversation, more conversation with presidents, but I don't think I can compare my conversations and my visit to State House as I had with Levi Mwanawasa. The Post would paint it differently. Like we were arch enemies and rivals. It wasn't the case. I visited President Mwanawasa. I remember I only visited Dr. Chiluba a couple of times. Not on one. I'd never had any one-on-one meeting with Dr. Chiluba. I had one-on-one meeting with the Rupiah Banda. I had one-on-one meeting with the ECL. I'm yet to even have one-on-one meeting with the
President
HH. Yes. So, that said, I'm falling back to Levi because President Levi Mwanawasa goes to Parliament, lifts the immunity for Dr. Chiluba, and I visited Dr. Chiluba in his new home, and we were talking. As we were chatting, he says, "Bishop, are you aware?" First, he commended me for visiting him. He commended me because he told me, I know there are cameras that are monitoring people coming in. And for you to bravely come to this, he said, this leper, I'm really, really honored. And he said to me, you are not among those I can consider as being close to me.
Yeah, true.
And he argued. I mean, he even joked and said, I don't remember giving you a brown envelope or white.
Yeah.
Because I never did.
Yeah.
I never got in. So he said, but all my friends, the people that I worked with so closely, and people that ate from my hand, have all disappeared. For you to come, I'm really surprised. And he even said, I would be honest to you and say that in your Oasis Forum voice and everything you were doing, there was a part of me that began to think, either you had political ambition, or there was some really powerful forces that were backing you up. And he said, we checked you out. My boys checked you out.
Yes.
You had no property to your name. There was nothing in the bank. But where is this guy getting all this authority to speak boldly like that? So I said, no, I'm just a servant of the Lord. Then he went into the issue and he says, Bishop, are you aware that my immunity was removed with the points that President Bwanawasa had raised in Parliament? But none of those charges are before the courts of law.
Yes.
I am facing a total different barrage of charges than the ones on which the immunity
was lifted.
So I've wondered. And he says to me, I've asked myself a question. Where is the Law Association of Zambia?
Yeah.
So I'm seated there and tick. I have wondered, where is justice in this country?
Yeah.
I tick. Then he says, I've even wondered, where is the church that can speak for the voiceless and people that are trampled on? And if they can do that to me, who was a former head of state, I wonder what could happen
to ordinary people.
I was there, Brother Emmanuel, I was soaked. I was feeling it, and I said, yeah, he's right. I said, Mr. President, is that true?
Yeah.
He said, yes. It's true. You can go to the courts. None of those are charges on the list of what Mr.
President Nchito as a public prosecutor. Yes.
So I said, if that is the situation, I'm going for it. And I left that place. I passed through State House and I sought audience. I had an appointment. Mr. Chilufya made an appointment for me. Yes. And for sure, the next day I was at State House. And I spoke to Levy very candidly. And I said, you can't do that. If you can do this, the best thing you could do is replenish or return his immunity.
Then lift the immunity on the new charges that you have.
Yes. And use the charges that you have. But you can't. In fact, I was thinking that when you go to court, the first thing that you use are the basis on which the immunity was lifted. And then going forward, you can still amend and add those other things that you have discovered. But you cannot bring fresh charges and throw away everything on which the immunity was. So that, to me, that is the way I operate. And I don't mince my word when I say Dr. Chulwa was not a very close friend of mine, but he was a head of state. And I visited him in that context. I never had a brown envelope, not a single one. Even when I was operating as EFZ, no. In fact, fortunately, we just sort of crisscrossed. He was getting out in 2011, 2001.
2001.
When I was also taking over
Coming in.
as EFZ executive director.
But the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation had wide support. I think the Catholics expressed concern only because of their history. Remember, they used to be the state and the church.
Yes.
And over time, when they gave up the issue of the state, they said there would be the church.
Yes.
So historically, I think it was, and philosophically, it was correct for them to oppose to Zambia as a Christian nation. But this is something that has now been embraced by all.
Yes.
This I can say because it has repeatedly come when we are doing constitutional amendments and constitutional development.
Yes.
Zambians have embraced the declaration. But the conduct of leaders somehow have betrayed the principle of Zambia as a Christian nation.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts, and what is the future of our republic on the issue of Zambia as a Christian? Yeah.
Interesting, Mwamba. I want to say something.
Yeah.
And you can check that out because there are people who are still alive. I know some others are no longer here, but there are still people who are still alive. Godfrey Mianda is still alive. And you remember he was the minister with that portfolio.
Yes.
And at the time, after my message, the one I referred to, and then December 29, Zambia was declared a Christian nation, we as evangelicals and Pentecostals felt like we were blacked out. Anything that we would want to do with the president at that time, it seemed at that time that Chiluba was not available.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You felt he leaned more to the Pentecostals.
No, he was not even available for the Pentecostals. I'm talking about EFZ.
Oh, EFZ, which encompasses all, yes.
Pentecostals, yes. We just felt it was, he was not there for us.
Ah, I see. Yeah, Honorable Godfrey Mianda was vice president then.
No, before he became vice president.
Oh, yes.
At that time, it was Levy who was vice president.
Yes.
And Brigadier was minister with that
portfolio. Correct.
But he was the secretary general
of the party.
Yes. And he was a Christian and minister with that portfolio. But we were made to understand that any engagement religiously, we would go through him before the religious desk with Chintala was created.
With Reverend Chintala.
So right at the beginning, we began to feel anything we would invite him, either the letter was not found, and some people would meet with him and said, but we invited you for this and he didn't come. And so eventually, we cornered him. I think there was a function that he was invited at, a religious function. I forget it was. So he was confronted and said, why are you sidelining us as evangelicals? No, we are not. He said, no, we have sent letters and you are not. So he says, okay, Brother Mianda, can we make an appointment? We made that appointment. In short, we went to State House.
Yeah.
When we were going to State House, General Mianda says, be careful. My brother can be different at some point. It can be difficult at some time. So don't take it for granted that everything was. And I remember Gabriel Shoes even saying, no, he's our brother, we'll tame him.
Yeah.
So we went there excited. We went. In short, we were in the meeting waiting for the president. Of course, the president came in. He came in and stood there, and he said, the chairman stood up and said, oh, welcome, brother. We were so. And the man just took off. Brother? Did you say brother? Me? Today I'm your brother? Oh, no. You must be serious. You have gone out of your way. I thought as brothers you would have been the ones to back me. But I declared Zambia a Christian nation. And
you are quiet.
No. We actually queried.
Yeah.
And some of them even went to far saying we never were consulted.
Yeah.
You never consulted us, so we cannot, we don't know the agenda behind this declaration and all the things. My brother went to town. Chiluba went to town, lambasted, and you should have been the first forerunners to do that. So then we got our message, and he walked out. He stormed out of the meeting.
Wow.
We had our tails between our legs as it to speak. So we got the message. So I am saying this in terms of our response towards a Christian declaration. In that meeting, what we wanted to advise was that it's not in the declaration. It is in the practice.
And
You
in the
should
hearts
be
of
able,
people.
yes, as a Christian, you should be able to do as you are supposed to be doing. And not publicly declaring Zambia as a Christian nation. And there are lots and lots of things that are happening. And of course, there were a lot of things that really disappointed us. In the end, even as you recall, there was a divorce that happened, and as well as the charges that were heaped against him. He was going back and forth to court. And by the way, it's one of those things that I spoke to Levi about. Dr. Mwanawasa about. I talked to President Mwanawasa and I said, no, you can't do that. And he gave me his word. He said, I cannot interfere with the process of the courts as president, but I can guarantee you, Bishop, there is no way I can send my brother to prison. Let them do the processes, but I would definitely not see him go to prison. No matter what they come up as the verdict. At that time, I'll use my prerogative to say, now we know, but we cannot lock up the... So that I actually got
He gave it to you.
He gave
himself,
my word
the president gave...
Yes. But I think what we wanted to do with Dr. Chiluba was to make sure that we frame this Christian nation declaration in a way that it speaks to practical, ethical issues and issues that we cherish as a church, for example. So now we have a situation where it is more political, politicized, you know, and people would champion it to canvass for votes. When it is convenient, I would say, no, but you know we are a Christian nation. When we know we have maintained the Christian nation. Because they know that if we remove it from the constitution, there are consequences from the Pentecostal and others. But I think that apart from
what must be done? Clearly, this is something our people want.
Yes.
And clearly, this is something politicians abuse.
Yes.
So what must be done?
From our angle, let's start from the church. I think even as church, it must not be just a mere pronouncement. We must live by those same standards as a Christian nation. And sad to say that there are things that even in the media, talking about pastor this, apostle this, so it negates the reason why we can even begin to speak to the powers that be. Because if we clean up house as a church, it will be easier for us not even to be proclaiming we are a Christian nation. We'll just live the Christian life. And in Christianity, as
thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, it becomes natural.
Yes. Then when we do that, I think even our politicians will tag along, will bring them along. I think we are the first culprit, and I will admit it. I think we have not served, apart from celebrating the Christian Nation Declaration, praying on October 18th, apart from that, dancing and whatever, I think there are lots of things that we need to do as Christians within our ranks that speaks to those kind of lifestyle. Now, talking about even lifestyle, you know, poverty is at a different levels in this our country. But
in fact, before you speak to that, there is a section of your flock now in your capacity as chairperson of Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, where there are a lot of concerns. These new prophets, new apostles, totally unregulated. And sometimes they bring embarrassment to the entire church
Yes.
with the theology they practice.
Yeah.
Just what we are seeing in the media, the scandals.
Yes.
Is it you who have lost control? Or is it the law? Or you haven't been given room? I say so because I'm looking at the main mother bodies.
Yes.
What would you say about this? And how can we curb? Of course, we need flourishing church. The church should flourish.
Yes.
We need evangelization to take place everywhere. We need churches at every corner. We should have more churches than we have bars.
True.
But clearly there is an abuse, and our people, I think, are frowning upon, especially Imwewa Pente,
Yes,
you know.
it's true. It's true. That's what I was leading up to. The gap between the poor and the rich is not only expressed in political circles. You can see a lot of us in the church. You can tell that we are well established, we're able. And even within our churches, there are people who are poor.
Yeah.
And I'm ashamed to say that some of us do not even care for those poor people. As long as we are in our Benz, we are in our GXs, we are in our Prados and everything, and we are housed, it's a man of God that needs to be taken care of. Yes, take care of the man of God, but blessings must also flow. You are a channel of blessing to others. That, I want to say, some of us take exception to us. Secondly, there are media. You have just mentioned the media. Just recently, someone sent a post to me of a guy with a Zimbabwean accent that was asking people to contribute, and he was hosted by some pastor locally here, and he was saying, serious people, before I pray for you, bring 10,000. He made an announcement.
Yeah.
What is the lowest? And the host pastor says 10,000. So who is serious here to be prayed for? And this one whispered and said, you don't say it in public. And I saw the video. Ambassador Bob Samakai sent that to me.
Yeah.
Said, but what are you doing about this?
Exactly.
And this guy is listening to this. So in the end, he says, all of you who stood here are not serious, because none of you have even talked about 10,000. So I'm not going to pray for anyone. And throws his arms in the air and says, it's ended here. So now, your question is right. Is it us that have failed? Is it the law that has failed? Is it just that we don't care? Let me begin where we tried our very best to help. Without raising controversy with any of the other mushroomed mother bodies. You know, we were 3 church mother bodies. At that time, there was, if you recall, there was an episode, I think it must be 2004 or 2003, I'm not sure, in Uganda, where a prophet came and told his parishioners, the world is coming to an end, so come, and set them ablaze, and everyone perished.
Yeah.
Against that backdrop, there was an incident where bandits had robbed, I don't know if it's a petrol station or a bank, and they were chased by the anti-robbery squad, and they went into a church in Matero.
Yeah.
And when they cornered them in that church, they did not only pounce on them, but they also found other guns in the pastor's office, AK-47. Mrs. Sakala, who was the registrar at the time, invited us to a conversation, the 3 church mother bodies at the time. And we sat. How do you help us?
Yeah.
How do you help us to control this? So we offered the solution. And right now, if you want to register a church by the Register of Societies, you need an endorsement from a church mother body. That is where it came from. We were saying to our Register of Societies, Madam, we know ourselves better than you. So if someone was to be recommended by us, we'll be recommending someone who would not abuse, drink blood in their worship. We would investigate them before we recommend it. The only problem with that, which was implemented, the law was, a statutory instrument was signed, and that is what is obtaining legally at the moment. The counter to that, the undoing of that law, was the fact that there was also a provision that you could register a church by guarantee under PACRA.
Oh, yeah. And now that's outside the registrar's control.
That not only a registrar, but it was outside our control. What we wanted to help government with was usurped and taken there. And because PACRA wants money, as long as you can pay, you can register. And people register.
Yeah, because there are companies that are not for profit.
Exactly.
And that's where civil society and churches can fall. It can be abused.
Exactly. And that's where the issue is. And there are churches. I know of one big church named withheld for now, that many people contributed, and so the guy divorced his wife. And the church wanted to get rid of him. He says, no, you are supposed to go. It's my company. And they came to EFZ. They were not even members of EFZ at that time. So they came and said, can you help us? And I remember calling Musa Mwenya, the lawyer then. I said, there's this problem.
Former Attorney General.
He checked. Yes, he checked before he even became Attorney General. Then, in those years, he checked and said, no. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. That is a company. Whatever you do, you are donating to that couple. And you need to, that's about
So there's weakness in the law.
There is a major weakness.
Major weakness.
Major weakness.
And also the mother bodies outside the traditional mother bodies.
Exactly. And when now we even move to the third term push, EFZ, CCZ, ZEC refused to endorse Dr. Chiluba's third term. There was a mother body that was created by Dr. Chiluba.
Purposefully for
Purposely to back him. And it's still existing. Because when we saw Mrs. Sakala again, and we named that organization, and she told us, said, even if the man was standing here, I would not recognize him. I'm even surprised that he's the one that is championing that mother body. So who did register? State House.
Yeah.
And they named the person from State House that brought the paperwork. I'm on public media, it's difficult. But she named the person. This one brought the papers, and that's how we registered that umbrella body. So I think the question of integrity comes in. How can you, as a church leader, be given papers, run this mother body, for my intention and purpose of getting my third term, backing from a church mother body, and you go along with it? You accept that? No. And so we have a situation where people come to us and we are stringent. We apply stringent measures in scrutinizing them. And because we are being stringent to protect the same church, the same Christian declaration, but they will move next door to another so-called registered mother body and get the recommendation, and they go to the Register of Society and register. And so we have all of this. Unfortunately, we fall victim as EFZ because we embrace charismatics and Pentecostals. But I'm saying this to the public. Not everyone that claims to be Pentecostal or charismatic are members of EFZ. They are not. And they can do all sorts of things and somersault and do whatever. If they are members of EFZ, we will move in, we will censor them, and we tell them this is not acceptable. Like the video I was just referring to.
And miracle money and all these
issues. We checked that. And we found that they were not our members. It ties our hands how much we can.
Is there anything the church is doing about that? clearly,
we are engaging. Yes,
yeah,
we are
clearly
engaging.
it's a matter of concern for
Seriously,
members
yes.
of the public.
Seriously, now, during the last regime, I know there were a couple of guys that were blocked at the airport through the Minister of Religious Affairs. They were blocked from coming into the country.
Yeah.
Again, you remember my justice passion kicks in.
Yes.
You know? Because, yes, you may call him a false prophet and you block him. But at the same plane, on the same plane, there was a Muslim and you don't even question them. They've come through. In my head, it's questioning the Christian nation. This one who even talks about Jesus, you tell them, no, you can't come into the country. This one who does not even talk about Jesus, Hare Krishna, they come through. Either as visitor and whatever. What a contradiction. So we sat, and I said this to Mrs. Sumaidi. The judgment is not for government. You can't censor, you cannot, as government, be the ones to censor those who are coming in. But what we need to do as government is to strengthen our own local churches, our own local mother bodies, so that when they are inviting those chaps, you are dealing with me. That one will come and go, but the damage that person will cause will remain. The guy I'm referring to in the video that Bob, Ambassador Samakai sent to me,
yes,
he was hosted by a Zambian. So for me, I think the concentration should not be so much on that visitor, but that Zambian who invited him. And I think that is where we need to belabor the point.
In fact, government's role is to empower you.
Yes.
Recognize your regulatory powers.
Yes.
And leave it to you.
Exactly.
So that then government can say, how did these fake prophets come under your watch?
Yes.
I agree with that approach.
Exactly, because they would be holding us accountable. And therefore, we will also,
be
in
vigilant.
the process, be vigilant to make sure that, no, don't embarrass us. Don't do that. But if the government become the police and begin to do that, probably they will even be misunderstood. The scenario I've given you was one that we observed, because they were demanding that people that are coming to have conferences, they should write through EFZ, they should write to the Minister of Religious Affairs for clearance. Fine, that's okay. EFZ was very happy to do that. But at the same time, they were not doing that for the Muslims. They were not demanding for
other
faiths. And we found it, abnormal, and it was not something that was accepted by our standards.
Because of Christian declaration, there have been persuasions by presidents to either create a religious desk, or in the case of President Edgar Lungu, he made a ministry. What are your views about that?
I'll be honest, because I even spoke to President Lungu about it. We went, we had a conversation. My take is that unless there was a very definite role that ministry would play, I didn't support it. By definite role, I'm saying, as a church, we run hospitals.
Yeah.
And naturally, I would go to currently Mrs. Masevo. If it's health issues, drugs and whatever, I would go there. Registration of churches, they are home affairs. I would go there. If it is to do with education, I would go there. And so forth. Rebate, I go to Minister of Finance. So by elimination, I would want to be made to understand what would be the role that then the Minister of Religious Affairs would play. And I find that most of the things that we engage with government would end there. And I don't see any value that this ministry would play. I honestly don't. But of course it was combined with guidance.
National guidance.
National guidance. And then you had the values and pushed the values, the agendas. Now, unless that ministry was raised above other ministry, my understanding would be that if the Ministry of Religious Affairs and National Guidance was above, the other ministry, then they will even permeate the other ministry, Ministry of Finance, so that there's morality, integrity, and all the values. They would go champion. But she's a cabinet minister, or in that case she was. She was a cabinet minister at a level with everyone. Who made you a boss over me? Why would you want to dictate? Why are you interfering? Keep your lane, madam. And that was the situation. So when you analyze the whole thing, I don't think I would really support. And I said that to President, and I went to see him primarily to ask that question and said, what is it that you are putting
you want the role that you want
in this ministry? When we go and meet, what is it that they can specifically deal with, which, as I've said, they will not? Are you suggesting that when it comes to the church-run institution, medical institutions, we still go through the Ministry of Religious because we are a religious sector? No. Why not go straight to the people that matter and answer the question? So for me, I think that it's redundant.
Okay.
For
Probably
what
we
it
need
is.
to strengthen institutions like yourselves.
Exactly.
Supported by the law.
Exactly.
And your regulatory powers.
Exactly. And I think that, again, back to Kaunda, that's one of the plus I give to him. Because the Kaunda then, the church then, it was the three church mother bodies.
Yeah.
Today
And
we have, and we are teeth. And he was a good, gracious enough to listen. Today we have everything going. And nobody is accountable for anything. Interestingly, I'm also from the Pentecostal family. Yeah. They insisted. They said, no, the Religious Affairs Ministry should be brought back. And of course, as the chairman, your duty, my constituents was demanding for it. Yeah. So we went to President Hakainde and we said to him, my constituency is crying foul. They feel that you have shortchanged them by removing the Ministry of National Guidance and Religious Affairs. His answer was very intriguing and interesting. He says to us, you as church leaders are my parents. You should be able to come here and sit me down. Hakainde, listen, this is what we have to do. We feel this is not going right. You must be able to do that for any of my ministries, my ministers. Yeah. For me to relegate you that you be answerable to a minister, I think that is demeaning the role of the church. My understanding of the role of the church is that you are above us. And you should be able to come in and tell us with force, no, sit down, this is not going right. Which I thought was a good perspective.
In fact, that answer dovetails me to this question.
Exactly.
Is he listening to the church? I say this because, Bishop, we are a nation in crisis. Yes. We have the highest cost of living, I think, in the last 30 years. If you look at the health outbreaks, we had anthrax, we had cholera, we had typhoid. Yes. Even in the agricultural sector, these maize borers are back. Then just the stagnation, I think, of the economy. You especially who interact with our people every day, are feeling it. Yes. Are the doors open? Like they've been open. You are one that has seen President Kaunda in office and out of office. You are one that has seen President Chiluba in office and out of office. You are one that has seen President Levi Mwanawasa in office. For him, may so rest in eternal peace. He died whilst in office. Yes. Rupia Banda. I don't know if you saw Michael Sata, but I would remember in public would ridicule you sometimes. You know how Michael Sata was. Yeah. And you saw President Edgar Lungu. Is this president giving you access? To you individually and then to the church?
Yes. We actually had a meeting with him.
Okay.
At his instigation. The first meeting we had as EFZ was our push.
Okay. You requested for it.
We requested for it, and he gave audience, and we explained some of the things on congratulating him for winning the election, and that was a very short, brief meeting. Later on, we had a meeting early 2023. I think we felt we needed to have a platform.
Yeah.
And converse, chat with him. In that meeting, of course, we brought out a lot of issues. And we insisted that we bring those issues before the cameras were dismissed.
Yeah.
And we raised those concerns. And in his response, even in a conclusion, he even said we should be having these meetings more often.
Yeah.
So he even directed Mr. Ngoma to say, can you agree when next we are going to meet? But he also quickly told us that, please, don't think I'll just be meeting you as the Evangelical Fellowship. I'll meet all the others as well, which we have no problems with. But we agreed that was not the end meeting. We were going to have another meeting, which never took place. We responded. I wasn't even aware that my secretariat, the ED, had actually found a space and communicated to
State House.
Mr. Ngoma, yes, telling him that we proposed this date. But of course, that second meeting has never taken place. But in terms of, as you open the door for that, and the promise that we should be able to be meeting more often, we felt that it was open.
Okay.
Because it was not like shut. Yeah. So, is he listening to the things that we raised? I think we also saw some reaction, some adjustments to those things that we particularly raised. So some of the concerns. We saw some adjustments that one would say, oh, because of that which I said, because of that which I said. For example, the first meeting as EFZ, and this was not script, you know. I was the one leading the delegation. So at the end of the chat, I said, Your Excellency, there are two personal things that I would want to engage you on.
Yeah.
You know, first and foremost, I raised the question of KBF. And I said, but you have appointed the cabinet. KBF did a lot for this united, this unit thing. How come he's left out? And then I said, I would love, for all that we have heard, especially during the campaign, the conversation, this young Kawana is very articulate. He's been answering correctly the things that we want to hear. And why is he thrown to the wire all of a sudden? Well, we left that State House. The following week, we saw Kawana appointed.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. So, to some extent, we would say, yes, there will be. But in general terms, again, okay, before I say that, I think there's also some credit that I give to him.
Yeah.
Because I have observed it, even within his cabinet. I had contact with him on a number that I used to communicate with him as the opposition presidential candidate. He's never changed that number. He's one among very few. Because there are some who are even Christians. You can't access them on the numbers that they used to. He's never changed.
I remember
And
even
when-
Michael Sata never changed his 095 number from the opposition. That is good.
Yes. And when it matters most, and I have some boiling issues in my sleeve, I'll just offload.
Yeah.
And I'll tell him, I think this is unacceptable. I don't think we can do that.
Does he respond?
Yes, he does.
Ah, okay.
Yes, it
good.
does.
Good.
Good for him, he does.
Another matter, and I'm glad I'm hosting you. The church, you're being accused that you are quiet. In light of the injustice that has occurred, the fearing of that there is a shrinking democratic space,
Yes.
opposition have not been allowed to hold political meetings, and other than the issues of the economy, I think there are a lot of the rising cases of corruption in this new government.
Yes.
And the church, I think, for almost 2 years, you were very quiet.
Yes.
But we are glad that the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops issued that pastoral letter in October, and you actually had preceded the pastoral letter.
Yes.
You issued one, and then CCZ then spoke after that. It's like that was the first time you were speaking in 2 years. Was there a deliberate ploy, coordinated, deliberate, or you just stayed away from criticizing the president? Or were you giving him, was he on a honeymoon?
Wow. Yeah, it's a loaded statement, but maybe at a personal level,
Yeah.
Ambassador, I would be honest with you. Somehow, in these civil society issues, there are levels that sometimes you feel fatigued. And you need some other players to come on board and try and do. I was hoping that Oasis Forum would have been sustained even after we left EFZ. I was hoping that some of the people that we have worked with, we have trained, would pick up the thread. Njovu is no longer in the country. I am not at EFZ. But that doesn't mean the voice should diminish. So with civil society, especially the partnership we had with the Law Association of Zambia, NGOCC, and the three church mother bodies, I just felt a bit fatigued.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Some reasons are very personal. To some extent, with the demise, actually, maybe even not the demise of Mwanawasa first. Just when Mwanawasa took office, we saw some of our colleagues that were with us in camp and would speak together. We would voice our resentment to certain things together. The majority of them had even appointments and quiet and whatever. And we were wondering what was happening. And I must say openly here, especially the Law Association of Zambia. We had a lot of them, and I think they were doing it out of conviction and respect for the man that had taken office at the time. They just swayed, and we were left and said, no, but what about the things that we stand for? Never mind. The wrong is too wrong. We still stand up and we still speak. We're not doing it for the Law Association of Zambia. We're doing it as church, and we would use that platform as church. So we went, and that's how you saw our continuation with President Mwanawasa, the way aggressively we were leading the process of the constitutional making. And maybe I also want to share with the listeners one thing that is very true. When we fought the third term and it ended, I think, let me back up. Because I think there's some credit that EFZ has which has never been recognized. The Green Ribbon campaign.
In 1996. Which one?
No, the one we had in 2001.
Okay, the 2001 one, yeah.
The time of the third term.
Okay, yes.
The anti-third term green ribbon. It is not the thing that Dr. Chiluba decided upon. I do recall very clearly that we had a prayer and fasting meeting at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. And in that meeting, which was organized and hosted by the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, maybe I must say credit goes to Mutembo Nchito. We had a conversation, Mutembo, myself, and Mr. Mark Chona.
Yeah.
This man means business. He's very, very serious about going for the third term. So how do we stop him? We do need to do everything possible to stop him. We went on radio, the green ribbon, honking on Friday and whatever. He was not budging. The more we honked, the more chiefs were coming, receiving bicycles and affirming him. He has not completed his projects and all and so on. So we were grappling, with this and grappling with this and saying, what next? So at a time, I remember it was Mutembo who said, but we can do something through Parliament. What is it? As a lawyer, he suggested, why don't we collect signatures from MPs?
Those signatures.
Yes. Wow. So we went, how do we do it? How do we galvanize? First of all, they are already scattered in their constituency. How do we be able to collect them? Or how do we even bring them to Lusaka? So then we went to the Nordic, countries. Yeah. Swedish, the Norwegian,
Finnish.
And the Finnish. And we spoke. And the head of the ambassadors at that time was Ambassador Mads of the Norwegian. And we shared that. And they were willing to give us some funds. Yeah. Funds to bring in the MPs from their rural places. And then we said, knowing President Chiluba is too smart. If we go to Mulungushi and host this, like we did the Oasis Forum, the Oasis restaurant meeting, they'll just shut us down. So why don't we call for a prayer and fasting? So we had the church. We used the church. And in that meeting, we had 21, including 2 vice presidents. There was the vice president of the party, MMD, with General Mianda, and the Republican vice president, Christian Tembo, who were there. And we sold out the message. And we said, look, you gentlemen, are you telling us that you cannot succeed President Chiluba?
There's none amongst you.
None among you can do this. It's unthinkable that you big people can say he only can complete the tasks, the project that he has started. So the thing lit like bushfire. We collected 21 signatures, and again with the wisdom of Mutembo Nchito, bless him, he said, if we keep this, the system is smarter than us. They'll come around and get. So we chose 3 independent international banks, and we deposited those signatures. So anyone that would come to us at EFZ and go to Mutembo, or indeed CCZ, at that time we had even brought. And maybe why, while it is hot, why is EFZ? We had a meeting at 3 church mother bodies, and it was resoundingly told to me, he's your man.
Yes.
Deal with your man. If you say, can you deal with your man? So that's how we came up with that strategy, and we started collecting signatures.
That turned into an impeachment motion.
Exactly.
And an impeachment motion that allowed Parliament not to sit. It was actually dissolved without sitting, if you remember.
Exactly.
Because the threat was genuine.
We had collected, at the close, we had collected 93 signatures. Enough to impeach the president. So it is at that time that Dr. Chiluba came and says, no, I was just allowing debate. I'm not running. But it was not true.
Yeah, yeah.
I have not sought permission. But I think it's a positive thing. President of FDD now,
Edith Nawakwi.
Edith Nawakwi. At the time when we began, she was pro-President Chiluba.
Okay.
She was so convinced Chiluba cannot run. Remember the Kenneth Maduma interview?
Yeah.
After 10 years, would you feel like, no. Kenneth, not me. I'm setting a precedence. There's no way after, being in the seat for 10 years, I will come back and say, is that? No. So she was so convinced. Until one day, they came to my office with Mutembo Nchito and said, my brother, Edith would testify.
Yeah.
My brother, I was mistaken. My president means business. And he's not talking about the third term. He said, how am I? Tulefa tuchifumiepo tubefenga ku Britain, an open term. That's what he was aiming. An open term until
so constitutional amendment would come and then remove the term limit for the president.
Yes, that's what he was gunning for. So Nawakwi comes to my office and says, this
is now even bigger than what you felt.
I thought that my president was not, but this is what has happened. So I'm going to have a press conference, Mairo. I'm denouncing and I'm doing it.
Wow.
So the Lord gave me wisdom and I said, my sister, don't. Have you given him any indication that you disagree with him? No. So we said, okay, sorry. Better still. Sit still.
Let us take the battle.
In there. No. Stay in there. Can you be the one to tell us what is happening? Because we do not have an insider.
Yeah.
So Madam Nawakwi played that role exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Because
to your credit, when she was here sitting in your chair, she spoke about that extensively. Here is a beloved president she respected, admired, but they had to differ on principle on the issue of the third term.
Yes. But we left her inside.
Yeah.
So that whatever move they were making, lo and behold, to his master dribbler, we beat him to his game. Because he did not know why you were ahead all the time. So she was there and she was giving us the information and we would just go and plan. Oh, this is what next move. And before it is already there. We would preempt. So he was wondering what was happening. But he trusted us so much that he would not suspect. So that's another aspect of men and women God has used to protect our democracy in this country. And sometimes we don't give them the due credit. And she did that role. Mutembo performed. But I'm coming back to now the meeting at the cathedral. We got the signatures. And they signed up and it was game over for Dr. Chiluba. And the things were secure in the bank. With the help of our partners, they gave us enough money to recompense all the MPs. And we paid them on the rate
that Parliament pays
them. And the person who comes, for example, Kaputa, was the furthest. And we paid them. Going and coming back, because we are the ones that invited them to come to Lusaka. They were in their constituencies and doing their thing. So we brought them and they signed.
Bishop Paul Mususu, for me, this is what prompts my question. You have played such a key role, both personally and as a church. And it brings me to the same question about President Hakainde Hichilema and then the so-called 2-year silence. And you have spoken, but people still feel you are you are not speaking. I recognize the issue of fatigue where you want other voices to speak.
Yes.
And sometimes coming from an election, I think everyone goes on leave because you've achieved.
Yeah.
A new birth has occurred and
Yeah.
you want to give maybe the child room to grow and run.
Yeah. Well, before I do that, Ambassador, let me go back to the same thing we are building on.
Yeah.
Third term is quelled.
Yeah. Yeah.
The natural thing would have been for us to go back to the barracks, forget.
Yeah.
I was traveling from, I think it was Botswana. I met Ambassador Mads in South Africa. In the international airport, we met
Norway's ambassador. Yeah.
the Norwegian ambassador.
Yes.
At the time when I was meeting him, he was announcing that he has actually been shifted. He was appointed to go to Mozambique. And he was leaving Zambia to go to Mozambique. So we met, and he said something that was a contradiction to everything that everybody believed. He says to me, the best thing that ever happened to Zambia was the third term bid of Chiloba. And I said, are you crazy?
Hey, how
He
is
says,
that
no.
good?
He says the best thing that ever happened to Zambia is the third term. There has never been a time in Zambia where you had the practice of democracy at all levels. During third term, you had sitting cabinet ministers who would openly criticize their head of state without being fired.
Led by the vice president.
Led by the vice president. They would speak their mind and they were not fired. During the third term, it was the only time that people of all walks of life would do what democratically they are supposed to be doing. And he gave examples, and when
Including
he said,
parliament, the petitions you
when
got.
he said, yes, when he said that, it opened my mind. And I said, yeah, Ambassador, you are right. Then he said, I want to charge you. Don't lose that achievement. Don't lose the gains you have gained. So I said, but what do you mean? He says, you must keep the momentum. Keep the talking. Keep the gap. Don't leave it because it will come closing in. I'm leading up to your question. It will shrink the space. But that space that you have attained, maintain it. And one such thing that you can do is deal with your constitutional clauses that empowers the executive too much. And so the fight you have started as a Oasis Forum, bring it to conclusion.
Yeah.
For example, when you look at the actual clauses that Chiluba was attempting to use to bring about the change and give himself a third term, it is the looseness of the law. If you tighten that, it will make sure that whoever comes, whoever would come up with the dreams like Dr. Chiluba's, they will not do it because you have fortified it. So when I came back, I shared with my Oasis Forum. I was sharing at that time, and I said, no, we need to call Aluta Continua, and that's how we started now championing. The first engagement with Dr. Mwanawasa, he was not interested in the revision of the law or whatever. He just told us people will not eat in Constitution. But the Constitution will make them eat well. Protect their... No, I was not interested. Again, we fought those battles up to the time when there was the GC meeting here at Mulongoshi, where the donors were supposed to make pledges or whatever contribution. That meeting, we used that platform again with the help of Ambassador Mads to appeal to the donors. We said, this man you are putting money in the basket has refused the most significant thing on the agenda, and that is the Constitution.
To which will strengthen
everybody
democracy.
spoke to that. The next time, Dr. Mwanawasa called us to State House, and he said, no, I've reconsidered, and I'm going to work on the Constitution. Then the fight started, because we saw, with the help of the Law Association of Zambia, we saw that using the Inquiries Act to make the constitution is
a narrow approach.
It's not even
Doesn't
narrow.
guarantee good
it does
outcome.
not guarantee the outcome because we had done it in 1996. And Dr. Chiluba, 80% thrown out. Oh no, 70% was thrown out and only 30% was incorporated. So the same thing happened. So the legal brains told us, they said, no, the problem is not anything else but the Inquiries Act. If we are using the Inquiries Act the way it is, it empowers whoever is appointing the officials or the commissioners to reserve the right. And they gave the example of, remember the Gabon air disaster. Because there was a commission that was to investigate that, they brought the report to the head of state.
And there's nothing you can do to push that
forward. It is not seen the light of day to day. Nobody spoke about it. We tried to lobby and push nothing because the Inquiries Act empowers whoever is appointing the commission. So the same, we started engaging. That is where the differences were with President Mwanawasa, because we were telling him, you are a lawyer and you understand this. No, but this is the only provision in the law. And said, no, but you can make amendments. So we went to say, okay, if you are going to do it through the Inquiries Act, maybe we can correctly say, let's constitute a constituent assembly, which will now do the adopting. Because we don't want to throw everything away. They will give the constituent assembly at the same time as they report to you as the head of state, so that you don't choose what you put in. No, trust me. I said, no, we have trusted the heads before, head of states before, and it's not working. So then we pushed and pushed. So the agenda was clear from our angle. We wanted to conclude where we had lapses, where we had seen bottlenecks, so that we do not trust, we don't bank on men. We moved, and then we ended up with the late George Kunda as Minister of Justice, and everything was now channeled to him. It was disaster. In the end, we ended up with the kind of constitution that we ended up, the national constitution-making body that eventually was taken up by President Rupiah Banda. He just did
and the constitution failed, I think, in 2010.
And again, we were to pick up with President Michael Sata, who also did his gymnastics. But at that time, I think now you are saying the fatigue is kicking in. Yes, but it's not only the fatigue. I think for me, today, I can be honest and say, being a TFZ, like I already alluded to, interdenomination arrangement, for me, is a cup of tea. And that is where I feel very comfortable and operate very, very freely. When my church demanded that I go back and become overseer, and you don't know, but these are bedroom matters. I don't know how many times those of my members, the leadership, please spare us, because we are a church, and you know government will come and pick us. They'll pick on us because of what you are saying. Please. And you say an innocent statement in response to the query from the media. You will have 10 phone calls from, Bishop, what you said, Bishop. And some of them, of course, as a church, we have people that are pro-PF, pro-MMD, and pro-UPND. And at the time, if you are criticizing Rupiah Banda, then they'll come and say, no, but that is too much. But it is interesting sometimes, the same people who were very, tone down, Bishop, tone down. When they are on,
was 10.
Yes, when they are on,
they want your volume
was
up.
out. Then they said, "Can you speak to us? Can you speak for us?" And I said, "But you are contradicting yourself. Do you want me to tone down, or you want me to speak?" So apparently, I think that has weighed so much on the current situation. In my fatigue, probably in my also experience and maturity, I have felt that, and this is not for just President Hakainde, but even President Lungu. If you know me well, you realize that I never spoke as much when President Lungu was in office. But that does not mean I never talked to him.
You never engaged,
I engaged with him, and I feel that probably sometimes it is helpful when you talk to the person. On that level, they probably would listen to you more than they would if you just spoke to the public. But there's also an angle where people must appreciate what you are dealing with in private. When President Mwanawasa took office, is one man, like I've said, who I was very close, one-on-one. I'll tell you something that I've never said publicly now. When President Mwanawasa won the election, I went to him, and unfortunately, General Shikakwasha is no more. He would have confirmed that. I went to him and I told him, President, now that you have started fighting against corruption, it is unethical, it is not a sign of gratitude. Because you are a product of that same corruption. I like the fight, but my advice would be, can you nullify the election, corrupt election that created you? I never voted for you, but I can tell you, with what you have indicated, if you nullify the election and go back to the polls, I will vote for you. And I know many Zambians will give it to you. Your 29% would be much higher than that. I said that one-on-one with President Levi Mwanawasa. Probably he has not heard anyone say that, as I came to realize later on, that even that did not sit very well with my president. Because, now fast forward, the day I was actually referring to when I was shot at, it was a time when, in the morning, one of the prominent lawyers at the time, is no more, high state council, had a meeting with two of my colleagues in the Oasis Forum. And he made a statement and said, to the effect, he said, you work with the Bishop Mususu? Yes. That young man is on the president's leave. The president just shared with me that the boy had the audacity to go and tell him to nullify
the election.
You see, up until that time, there was not one person I'd said, not even my wife. So when I heard that man say it,
third party,
I knew it must have come from Levi. President Mwanawasa must have said, because it was just the two of us. And I zipped up, I never said anything. So when I heard it, I knew that it had come from. So those my two sisters came from that breakfast meeting. They came and said, Bishop, what did you do? How? I said, I was just being sincere and helpful to the man. Of course, later on, he learned also another lesson, because I went to him. Mrs. Maureen Mwanawasa would testify that. I went to him in 2005, the 2006 election, when he was supposed to recontest the second term. I went to him, and I spoke very strongly, and I said, please, listen to your body. Listen to your doctor's advice, because there are things that they can pick in your body.
Were you aware that he was unwell?
He was. I was, because I saw him several times. And every time we met with President Mwanawasa, at the end I would pray with him. And he would always say, you know my request. Bishop, you know my request. The body is weak. The spirit is willing to serve my people, but my body is giving. I can't. So I said to him, Listen to your body, listen to your doctors, because there are certain things that you cannot feel, but they are there. Advice from the doctor is imperative.
Yeah.
And I said to him, don't listen to your fellow politicians.
Yeah.
They may not be doing it because you are a popular candidate, but they're actually doing it to save their jobs. Not even your wife. I said that.
Wow.
Then I said this. I regretted it had already come.
Yeah.
I said, I'd rather have you out of State House and alive than a dead president.
Wow.
I said that. The moment I said that, everything about me, he just said, no. Now that is. But it had already come.
Yeah. And it was correct. It was correct.
I said it, but I didn't expect that in 2008 we'll end up with that. But I said it, and it came out of me. Later on, I actually assured him, and I said, I'll be praying for you. Then he made his decision to contest, and he ran. I'm sure in the hearts of many, there were those of us that really felt, with the pressures of that office, he needed to take a back seat, and probably the man would have been here with us. A very serious-minded person, straightforward. You engage him, and if you are able to bring his... Kalungbanda is the one who helped me. He one time was eavesdropping in our conversation as he was a advisor to the president. He saw me talking to him, but there was a point that I had, but I could not come forcefully to him because I was holding back because he was the head of state as the president. He made me aware. Kalungbanda came to me after the conversation and says, Bishop, you had a point, but you couldn't say. So he said to me, when you are talking to him, he forgets he's a president. He talks to you as a lawyer.
Yeah.
So engage him. If you have something, just push that button and make sure that you put your points across. From that advice, I engaged him as a lawyer. And many times, I know, many times would come from this position. By the time I'm leaving, he has shifted. Because and if you give him the facts, you gave him the points, and he was satisfied, he was able to come along with you. And that was President Levy. So I said that, and regrettably, it happened. And that I feel very sad about.
No, that's what Bishop Paul Mususu, that's what you are known for. You speak truth to power. And truth in many times is uncomfortable. Truth is not nice to say. A lie is easier to say. A lie flows. Truth, unfortunately, doesn't. As we begin to wind up, I want a reflection of our presidents. Let's start with Dr. Kaunda. In a few words, what were the good virtues about him? What could have been his weaknesses?
I think in terms of weaknesses in my analysis, he just stayed too long. He should have handed over power.
Okay. Like
Julius Nyerere did. And he would have been at a very different level in our hearts and our minds as a nation.
His strengths?
To be defeated in 1991, the manner he was, I think it was
it took away
disservice, a disservice
took away from
to the man.
His achievements.
He did tremendous. There are things that you look back, which we find fault in, but I think there were strength if we knew what they were doing for us. For example, the parastatals. For example, the education that we had. We benefited from the education from Dr. Kaunda. So when we are talking about the run-down economy at the time of 1991, it is with a cause. We benefited. But I think apart from the longevity of stay in the power, the other thing that I would take a minus was the policy about politicians doing business. I think there was something about
There was a leadership code.
Leadership code.
That
Yes,
barred
that's the one. The leadership code.
all the leaders not to engage
exactly.
in politics,
and I think
in business.
Yes, I think that was a disservice, and it killed many of our leaders. Immediately that they lost power in 1991. But there were also others who were unscrupulous that never followed what Kaunda was teaching, and they were on their own. But I think that leadership code was the bad one. If it's parastatal, the coupons, and the other things, I think we shared with them, and it is just people that abuse the system. UBZ, for example. I remember jumping on a bus in 1987. I was speaking at a conference in Mumbo, and when I was coming back, the guy sold us the tickets, the same tickets that he was collecting. You know, there was those tickets that were machined, and there was also those that they were writing. When people were disembarking, he was collecting, the driver was collecting the tickets. And when we were jumping on the bus, he was selling us the same tickets that had been used from Lusaka to Mumbo. So it meant that all the money was pocketed. When I came back and I was really, we came halfway before we got to Lusaka. There was a bus inspector who was coming. And the guy just zoomed past him because he knew what he was doing. So we got to the station. I jumped out quickly. I went and pulled one of the inspectors. I said, this bus, even the people that are there, the tickets are resold. And I gave him mine. So in my view, the parastatal were okay, but the people did not catch the vision. They abused it, and that's how we failed. Down the line, Dr. Chiluba. Well, the liberalization, I think, was a good thing, but it should have been with limits. There are certain government institutions and parastatals that should have been protected and preserved. And the way it was indiscriminately done, I think it was not proper. Yeah. And we've never totally recovered from it. Yeah. I'm thinking about the Zambia Airways. Thinking about the other parastatal organization. I mean, businesses such as Indeni, of course that one is still, we are talking about maybe cereals and car manufacturing, assembly in Livingstone, and the many like. I think the undoing, which people do not relate, is the fact that today we are fighting cholera. But just because of that thing that Chiluba did. Do you know, because you have a tire-making company in Mansa, battery, and you have some other issues like bicycle making in Chipata, motor assembly in Livingstone, by nature, pineapple cannery by nature of those being operationalized in regions, it sucked up some professionals. Yeah. You needed engineers and those. And the urban drift, not precisely. Everyone would and those who would go there and work in Livingstone or Mwinlunga, they would take one or two of their nieces and relatives. That would decongest Lusaka. But we are in the crisis. We are in the situation we are in because all those Dunlops and everything was shut down. Cereals in Luansha was shut down. And so Lusaka is the place to go. So we are where we are by the decisions that were made. Worse still, the sale of council houses. I think that was the most, to me, I think it was the most evil thing because the councils have never recovered. It robbed them of income. Yes. And just, you're talking in context of cholera because cholera is what we have. The councils used to keep the things clean because they had the monies and they would do that. You cut their hands, they cannot do anything to survive. Levy. I think Levy I've already touched on. I think to me, he would stand tall. Yes, he was listening. He put in places, even the constitution I'm talking about. There was a time we engaged as OSS Forum, and the man just said to us, in view of you, let's give our friends what they want.
Wow.
If they are representing the people as we are saying, let's go that way. Let's do the Constituent Assembly and whatever. And I remember very strongly General Shikapwasha coming out and said, no. At that time, he was information minister and said, no, Mr. President, we can't throw away the baby with the bathwater. We need to have control over this thing. And in that debate, then he handed us over to George Kunda, who was then Justice Minister. My take on President Banda.
Rupiah Banda, yes.
Rupiah Banda. He was a diplomat, very respectful. But sometimes he was also very cunning. I was with him in Kampala for the Smart Partnership Congress.
Yeah.
He had invited me. He had this habit of, at least in Tourage, you would get some oppositional political party.
Yes.
And, this time he carried me. And we were there. I learned. And I was really surprised to learn that there was a guy who made a presentation and he really took it on us as the clergy. First of all, he talked about the missionaries, really castigated, and then he came down to the clergy, even those stooges who are calling themselves pastors, and I was probably the only pastor there. He hammered left, right, and center. Of course, I couldn't engage him. He made this presentation. Now, the point that I'm making is that with all the respect that he had, there was the other side of sarcasm. So he would say, he was saying to one of the delegation, and said, Bishop Amuchita. That kind of, he was joking about it. So that side of him, sometimes you are not too sure what to make out.
Yeah.
And there were times that I would go to State House, and I'm sharing with him. I remember one thing just before election, which I said, not for public consumptions because there are names that are involved. But I shared something with him. He only saw it after he was out of State House. And when I went to see him in Kasama, he said, a bishop, Ananuja, you told me. And I don't know.
Meaning State House.
Yes, State House. He says, when people are telling you something that will preserve your life, you don't listen. But the people that are leading you to death, those are the ones that you listen.
You listened. Michael Sata.
But in terms of relationships, he was a very good builder.
Yeah.
And evidently, the way he mediated this currency situation, that goes out of the way. Michael Sata, I was really profoundly surprised. There was a time that we were making them to partner with the HH. And someone made a comment and said, no, we don't want traitors. We don't want traitors in this and whatever. So now, President, the way he was aggressively. He said to the guy who was speaking, which traitors are you talking about? Which traitor? And they pointed the guy. He said, Ngaba EFZ. He said, something in my favor. I was really I was really shocked. EFZ Besa. And he spoke in Bemba and says, you are talking about Bishop Mususu. This is a very honest and decent man.
Yeah.
He's not like those conny men that you are talking about.
Yeah.
This man, when we agreed in principle not to attend the National Constitutional
Conference, yes.
Did you see him there? This man, even at their own EFZ meeting, he stood up and confronted all the other friends, those con men, and he named them, part of them. I was really surprised.
Yeah.
He had his facts right. I did not have a privilege that I had with all the other presidents, because everyone that takes office, I endeavor to see them, find out their vision, chat with them before I could criticize them. I don't want to speak in the press before I give them a chance. And for Mwanawas, I think it was even more extended, because for 3 years, I never spoke to the press. When I told when I started speaking to the press, I had even told him, I said, that from now
I'm going to the media.
I will be talking to the press. Because people
but he had allowed you to engage him for 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Even before, even beyond, I would still engage. He was one that would pick up the phone after reading an article in the press and says, what about this? Then I'll remind him. If it's something that I've already addressed, I'll remind him, Your Excellency, you remember I talked about this. But when we are engaging with Michael Sata, apart from that, I knew that he had a soft spot for me. So I didn't feel offended.
Yeah.
When they were doing this, there was a constitutional process that he had chosen to do.
Yes.
What were they calling it?
They used a technical committee.
A technical committee, yes. My colleagues from the Oasis Forum went and recommended me. They said, no, you can't leave EFZ completely out. There are people that can contribute to this. Unfortunately, my dear brother, then the ED, Pukuta Mwanza, submitted his name.
Oh, okay, instead of...
I had a call from Sebastian Zulu, who was Justice Minister, you remember. He called me and he said, your friends from the civil society want you to join this. Are you available? I said, do I come as an individual or I'm coming representing
the institution?
As well, I want to remind you that you have left out the church mother body EFZ and it's not on. So he said, no, it is you we want. And I also received a phone call from Guy Scott, the vice president. So then I thought this was serious. So I engaged my friends, EFZ, and I said, look, for me to be accountable and answerable to you, can I be the one nominated through you so that it be straightforward? My brother got an opportunity, he cashed in. And if you recall, there was a press conference where he said, I want him to hire a retired judge to teach him about the... If I wanted someone to represent EFZ, I would have chosen that. So that whole fracas was against the background that he wanted me to, which I greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
I think that, of course, he promised more money in the pocket, which we didn't. I didn't believe would be done. He promised 90 days he would do things. Nobody would have believed that was going to happen. However, he was a man of action, and there were certain things. But I think that, in all fairness, I felt that the PF was biting or chewing more than
they could
do. Because you see, there was the change of currents, new district, and a province added. Those districts also entails power, personnel being appointed. So there were a lot of things that he wanted to do at once. I thought that they should have staggered them, paced them, and it would have helped. I am afraid I don't take kindly for him to have 2 universities in one province which he created. I don't think that sits very well when you are a national leader. As a Northwesterner, I think we have pains. Sometimes, of course, I hear people say, Michael Sata was the best president. As a Northwesterner, I think it is very difficult for us to reconcile. There were statements that he made brandishing Northwesterners as the Banamazai toilet cleaners. Even when he was talked about the road, Northwestern province, at Ivalariakum farm, do you need to make it tar? Those were offensive. At your buttocks, you can't be in front. So it was very difficult. Even when President Lungu took over, I had an audience with him. And I told him, be your own man. If you have to win Northwestern Province, don't go there and champion the cause of Michael Sata, because we do not...
People are remembering his statements.
Yes, we do not take kindly to his approach of things. There may be some others who celebrate him, but certainly not Northwestern Province, because we had just had a president in Levi Mwanawasa, in Rupia Banda. We never were ridiculed. We never received that kind of thing. And on record, I think even today, people really hurt when they remember the history of that son of the soil.
For me, that goes to the campaigns. That sometimes the political rhetoric we issue on platforms have far long-lasting consequences than mere jokes on a platform.
Yes.
And there are certain things you can't joke about.
Yes.
On
So,
President Lungu.
President Lungu, I think I interacted with him, and I said quite a lot of things to him, especially my encounter with him after the election. Emmanuel, you'd remember now. Yeah. You are the one that brought him to my church. And you used me. Yeah. Tactfully, you set me up. So anyway, that said, when Lungu appeared, President Lungu appeared after the visit, you won't know how many phone calls I received across the country. Yeah. And people thought he was our member. This man were misled, he's Satanist. Is even a member of your church. That is not our member.
I remember that was the first church appearance that we had brought him to.
So you played your card, and I know that it was, you remember I actually said that. So immediately, immediately I got back to President Lungu and I said, you owe me one. Yeah. You used me, so you owe me one. Listen. Yeah. So I went with him, I walked with him, and I said, this is a great achievement, but please, let's move. My analysis of this is a gentle soul. He meant well, and he did quite some things. But I think he lacked the leadership that Michael Sata brought before. People took advantage of him. And I know that there were many other characters, some of them we know, that took that advantage to another level. My own assessment, I think when we are looking at the general aspect, we can't forget what the cadreism was under his leadership. That cannot be underplayed to a point where JJ and his team go and ransack a police station, and today is an MP. To move with a red shirt, you have committed a crime. In our own country, I think he left things too loose. He needed to be a lot firmer. Economically, of course, we cannot run away. He defaulted. Under his reign, we failed to pay the debts. We were borrowing. But on the other hand, we also saw some developments, the infrastructure that we have seen. Yeah. If only we are not defaulted, it would have been a very big plus for him. But with the default, it's negate because you are using borrowed money. And then you cannot pay back. I think even now we are still, rallying with it. But I just felt that we did not have a firm leader in President Lungu. And we've talked together. If you can't allow, Baba, you can't allow people brandishing guns like that. And that was a thing that was threatening. So now we have loose things that we cannot answer, like the gassing, things that happened under that regime, the markets that were, burnt. Those are things that probably we needed some answers to. And we still need some answers to. But generally, they work in disfavor of the man. In the immediate, I think he shouldn't have come back. I think he should have left you guys to run and just, for me, I think it's the same thing with Kaunda coming back. For me, I would leave it at he retired and go allow others to, you can't have even the Shiloba situation where, no, he has to come back and finish the project. No. I think it's past. Let him take leave, let him rest. And sometimes the statesman in him should be enveloped and embraced by the rest of us and give him the respect and dignity that office deserves. He's the only surviving president, former president, so there must be some way, even us, and I speak to myself, we can create an atmosphere where there will be dialogue between the former and the current. We attempted before he left office, and we've been attempting now. With
I think it remains your assignment.
We need to
your
make
assignment
sure that
as a church, I think, to bring this to
not avoiding each other, but being able to sit and talk.
Lastly, President Hakainde Hichilema, before I invite you for your last remarks.
I think President Hakainde Hichilema, there are certain things that he has done right. I think we can see the cadre that we are talking about is minimized. It's not completely done, but it's not the same way. And I think that if we were judging him at his own words, sometimes that's why it is very harsh for people. Because they're saying, no, you said this, you said this, you said this. But has he done something? Yes, I think he has. And some of them are not just rhetoric. The particular incident of the cadres that I've mentioned, the recruitment of both health workers and teachers, those are some of the positive things. In terms of the rule of law, I think there are aspects of somewhat some strength that we see as probably opposed to some of the things we were experiencing in the past. The undoing, I think nobody in their right mind in Zambia can sit pretty and say the economy is well, especially with the poverty levels and people that are crying, who are my members, and they need to eat. Yes, you have given some jobs, you have given this recruitment, but I think we need to answer to the broader picture. And I want to balance it. Sometimes, even in this scenario, there are certain things that are own making. There are also certain things that are instigated by international circumstances. Like, for example, the fuel situation is something else. Now, what is making it complicated? Because he told us that the dollar will be trading at a certain level. He told us that,
price of millimil will be at 50 kwacha.
Yes, so he told us that. So all those
exchange rate to be. So it's
exactly.
They are using his own words and campaign pledges.
Precisely. And I think that is the negatives that we face in this particular scenario. Can they be mended? I'm sure they can. And I think if we put our heads together and talk together and find solutions together, it can be done.
You are silent. Will you talk more?
At the moment, as I indicated, I think maybe I can, but I need to clear with my church, because my church is...
your new role as head of Evangelical Church in Zambia is different, because many people see your role as Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, either as executive director, the way you were. Here now, you are just chairperson.
I am
chair of the board.
Chair of the fellowship, but it's not full-time. But
because you have an executive director.
Executive director is a spokesperson for EFZ. And he's supposed to be the one to answer the press queries and stuff like that. But of course, there are press queries that come even to me. They still ask, no, we want your opinion. We want your sentiments. Sometimes it becomes very difficult. But I would say... I think it is a credit also, a plus to President Hakainde. There is a lot of open space for people to air their views. the shrinking space is I think it is something that also is a perception. Because so far, there were things that we can point to. Prime TV was closed. Post was closed. But there are divergent views that are coming at the moment, critical voices that are coming at the moment, and they have not been shut. Probably they may, but at the moment, they have not been shut. So people are free. So I will not even be using that as an excuse for not speaking out. I don't think that is the issue. The issue is our own church politics.
Yeah. Bishop Paul Mususu, we can talk forever. We might have a second bite, but we've literally covered both your life, and we've seen through your lenses, I think, our country, its national crises, and the opportunities, and now we can tackle the challenge. I would like to thank you that you've spoken to us. Second, you've been, like you said, you've been rare in the media, I think because of your new role, but you chose to come to this platform and have a conversation with us. It's a privilege we don't take very lightly. I am totally grateful. So, God bless you, and any last word?
God bless you, sir. Thank you very much that you were able to fish me out and come and have a conversation. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. To our dear viewers and listeners, until next time, shalom, and God bless you.